Hey, B-Siders. Welcome to another episode of Bravo for the B-Side. This is Jim.
This is Danny.
And we are here today with a wonderful actor and producer and director and a lot of things. Uh, we have Mr. Eric Schumacher here. We talked about him recently as portraying Doc Holliday in Tombstone Rashomon, Alex Cox film. And we are going to just talk about all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Hello, Eric.
Hello, and thank you for having me. Great to be here, guys.
No problem. Thanks for being here. Let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
The portrayal of Doc Holliday was absolutely just fantastic.
Thank you.
And I know in our conversations you talked about mental. Oh my God. Mental and physical preparation for the role. And I want to get into that because the one thing that we noticed was in all of the Tombstone movies, back from Henry Fonda and before and after, Doc Holliday had his walking stick, but it was more of an affectation of the character. Mm-hmm. They didn't play it as, he absolutely needed that to get around, especially later on. And your physical representation of that was fantastic because it looked painful. Watching the character, we got an absolute sense of what this man lived with day to day. And we were just talking about how that probably helped his legend, because in Hollywood, no one wants to see somebody gambling around with a crutch when they're supposed to be this big presence. But in real life, people who see him or saw him, and especially for the first time, didn't understand that his infirmity in no way inhibited his gunplay. And probably made some deadly misjudgments based on that.
Well, I have a theory about that also. I think that Doc was in a lot of pain and was struggling in a lot of ways physically, and of course famously drank a lot and used a lot of drugs. He was trying to self-medicate the pain and the other symptoms, and but I think that I suspect that he had almost a death wish, in a way. He was absolutely fearless gun and knife fights, and I don't think he would allow himself to intentionally lose, but I think he also was incredibly bold and took risks that maybe others would hesitate. And as a result, he was actually a very successful gunfighter. He also happened to be very good at it. I mean, he was an excellent shot and extraordinarily fast. That was one of the main things Wyatt said about him, was how fast he was with a six-shooter, and really good with a knife. I mean, he was an expert with a knife. But on top of that, when there's actual violence about to happen, there's a certain amount of fear of loss of life, and that can still movements or make people extra cautious. And I think he just once it was time to throw down, he was just, well, whatever happens.
So I'm curious, because you mentioned talking to a doctor who specializes in tuberculosis. How much research did you dive into for this role?
Quite a lot. And it actually started before I was cast. I was asked to audition, and about a year before, I had played Wyatt Earp in a television show for Fox called Legends and Lies: The Real West, and so I was asked to audition, and I said, I'd really like to audition for Wyatt, because I really didn't feel like it was done with that character. And they said, no, we want you to audition for Doc. I was like, what? But, huh? Are you sure? I mean, yeah, we really want you to audition for Doc. And I didn't understand why. But I knew that I had about 2 weeks from that time to find Doc Holliday because I was going to walk into a room in front of Alex Cox and audition. And it was a competitive audition. There were a lot of other people auditioning as well. And so I started just digging into who he was, and it was kind of, like most of the characters that I play, I tend to specialize in heavy character roles and things that are very different from me. The highest compliment anyone can pay me is if they see me on screen and they didn't know if I was in the movie. And that's the highest. And I've been blessed to hear that a few times. It means I've done my job right. Doesn't help my fame as much, but so I just went into this internal struggle to try to find this guy and then become him as much as possible, so that I could convince Alex that I could be Doc Holliday. And so that meant in that phase, just reading a lot about Doc and trying to find the center of the character, who I thought he was and what his main motivators, his main persona was based on. And when I found that center, everything else started to come together. So I did the audition, and I have to admit, normally when I do an audition, I try to just let it go after the audition and just, okay, I'm not going to think about it anymore. But my wife will tell anyone that I checked my phone literally every 15 minutes for a week to see if I got in this role. And so I actually have to, as an aside, I have to throw some props out. I was waffling as to whether to audition in the first place, much as it was fascinating to be considered for a role with Alex Cox, because I'm doing a lot of producing stuff and have been for a while. So my time is really at a premium. And I just didn't know if I had time, was what I was telling myself. Maybe it was just my own, trepidation about what a thing this would be to take this on. And I was driving to a location scout with my friend Jeff Notkin, who's a pretty well-known television host and producer, and also the president of the National Space Society. And I told him that I was thinking about auditioning for this film, and I wasn't sure if I should do it. And he said, "Are you out of your damn mind? This is Alex Cox." And so he almost ran me off the road. So I said, "Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm stupid. I should do this. I mean, it's Alex Cox, for crying out loud. We both love his work." So anyway, I went in for the audition, and after I got the phone call and was cast, I then realized, oh wow, I have 30 days, and I have to be Doc Holliday. It's not enough for me to just play Doc Holliday. People need to see Doc Holliday on the screen. That's how I work. I don't want you to see me. So, and he's so different than me. So I started by, I read a ton of stuff. I spoke with Alex a bit. He gave me a lot of great insights. He did ask me to, this is a historical character. A lot of people have played him. I don't like reviewing other actors' work when I'm going to play someone who has been played by others, unless I need to match something, unless I need to, unless for some reason I really do need to match another person's performance, which is difficult. But Alex asked me in particular to watch one performance, which was Victor Mature's Doc Holliday. And I didn't understand why. Victor Mature, for anyone who's familiar with his work, was a bodybuilder. The man was huge. Wonderful actor. I've always loved his work. He's most famous for Samson and Delilah. He was Samson, in case anyone. But that'll give you an idea of the sheer size of the man. And I was watching that film, and I still couldn't quite figure out why Alex wanted me to watch that one in particular. And there's a scene where he's talking with Wyatt Earp, and he comes across as powerful, and he comes across as charismatic, and then quite suddenly, out of nowhere, he starts coughing, and he looks like a weak, frail child. Just he goes from Schwarzenegger-esque here to, just suddenly manage to look really weak. And then I went, I understand something. So then I started researching tuberculosis really hard. Now, in the meantime, I also had to change my body. I'm not normally as thin as you would see me on screen. And I also knew that I was going to have scenes with Christine Deutsch, who played Big Nose Kate, Kate Haroni, quite wonderfully, I might add. She was wonderful to work with. And she's very thin. She's actress, Hollywood actress standard size, which is turn left and turn sideways and they disappear.
Right.
They have to be, in order to look like you're very like you're what the Western world would consider to be, quotes, fit on screen. You have to be quite thin because of the way that camera lenses, make you look a little larger.
Right.
That whole "it adds 10 pounds" thing is really true. So I had to try to look thinner than her because Doc was, in advanced tuberculosis at the time. So I also basically starved myself half to death and worked out like a demon. You could find me at the gym at 2:00 in the morning, running on a treadmill, just a little longer, every day. And then I just read everything I could get my hands on until I could, start putting the pieces together of his physicality, of where his thoughts came from. Basically, what I try to do when I play a character is try to build them from the ground up as a complete person as much as I'm able to. And I had 30 days, so I was in a bit of a panic mode. And it was funny when I walked onto set. My good friend Rogelio Camarillo, who played Billy Claiborne and has worked with me on a number of other projects, hadn't seen me for that 30 days. And I walked onto the set and he said, "Oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? You look horrible. What happened to you?" And I said, "I'm playing Doc Holliday." And he said, "Oh, wow, good job." So, but people would famously, well, not famously yet, maybe someday, but I remember, I would be kind of chuckled at because they served these wonderful lunches and meals for the cast and crew that old Tucson Studios put together for everyone where we were shooting, and just steak and vegetables and desserts and all this incredible food, and I would have a small piece of broccoli.
And that was the splurge.
It was, and mind you, to my fellow actors out there, don't be me. That was stupid. I was lightheaded all the time. I was dizzy. I was, I used it for the role, and it helped me, to remind myself that Doc was in pain, and that this tuberculosis ain't no fun. But all of these things were part of the process of understanding what I was reading about Doc and how that tied into how he would react to everything around him, because it was all taken through this filter of what was important to him in his life, what he still was trying to do, and the constant reminder that he wasn't well.
Right. But if you ask kind of a normal everyday person to just completely pivot,
the normals,
all those normies, to completely pivot,
No, we like to call them muggles.
Oh yeah, I love it. Are you a Harry Potter fan?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
You scored big with Danny.
To clarify. I mean, look, one of my formative experiences I just talked about came from visiting a sci-fi convention when I was a kid. I'm a raging geek. Yes, definitely a Harry Potter fan. I've read all the books. I've watched all the movies. I have a wand. Come on, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not a Harry Potter fan, which always makes for interesting conversations. But we have all the books, several sets of the books, collector set, and the reading set. Our daughter is heavily into it, so it's 2-on-1 constantly.
Mm-hmm. I'll win you over.
Well, but I mean, I have unopened collector's Star Trek Pez right there next to you. I mean, our office here is full of stuff, and I just bought a Boba Fett Mandalorian bounty hunter backpack because they were back in stock. It's lovely living in that as a geek, and then to be involved in this aspect of it.
Yeah.
This is heaven. The only thing that would be better would be earning a paycheck from it. But
that is nice when it happens, isn't it? Yeah.
It's sure is. It's a marathon.
Yeah. Right. I like that part too. I like that part too. That is also one of the things that I think that should be kept in mind for those who are considering getting into the entertainment industry, is that earning of a paycheck, and a reasonable one, is an extremely difficult thing to do. It's not, the mass majority, for example, of the actors out there are, either hardly ever working or living very much hand to mouth. And of course, during this current pandemic, which is going on, many of the ones who were just kind of making ends meet by doing acting roles alone, that's a rare thing, aren't anymore. And and then there's really a lot of distance from actor beginning to actor, who you see in big major motion pictures and who's raking in cash at all times, and even that is a precarious place often, as tastes change. And the same with filmmaking, but that being said, having multiple skills is also useful in maintaining, in staying afloat and in getting ahead of the game. And that's also one of the reasons that I produce, is that, when you have, particularly if you're a creator of a project, if you have some degree of ownership of the licensure, you have an income source potentially from it that,
right.
Multiple income streams is a great idea when you're in the entertainment industry. So the more skills you have, the more likely you are to get multiple income sources.
That's very
it's
true.
Even better if you own the work, And
we have talked about the as writers, the overnight success stories are plentiful.